Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Play again.
My name is Craig T. Nelson. I'm an alcoholic. Hello. Pass those baskets. I was born in Spokane, Washington in 1944. Thank you. Spokane. Obviously, you haven't been there. The heart of the Inland Empire. We have the Lilac Festival there every year. The lilacs growing in everyone's backyard. And it was there, I think, when I was about 6 or 7. My mother had taken me to the Bon Marché to get my Hopalong Cassidy outfit. And I got the chaps, and I got the gloves, and I got the hat with the little drawstring for when you rode your bike fast. 2 guns that tied down to your leg. And if you looked at it through the barrel, you could see the little bullets in the cylinders. Bandana, boots, Hopalong Cassidy, black and white. And when I was about 8 and that stuff was pretty much worn in, Hopalong Cassidy came to the city of Spokane in the Lilac Festival parade. It was a Saturday morning. My mom took me down. It was bright and sunny. Sprague Avenue, 1 block up from Skid Row. Parade and a lot of lilac-colored floats. And coming straight at me was Hopalong Cassidy on his horse Topper. Big white horse. And maybe about 50 feet away from me, I had my little hand up. My Hopalong Cassidy outfit. And he reined in Topper, and the horse reared up, and Hoppy waved. And we made eye contact. Me and Topper. Nah, me and Hoppy. It was the most magical moment of my life. I never forgot it. And I went home and I talked about it, and I wore that outfit in winter and summer. Didn't want to play Superman, didn't want to be an Indian, wanted to be Hoppy and Topper. And we take the bicycle cards and stick them in the spokes of our bicycles, you know, and playing cards, your mother's gin set and pinochle. We'd ride around the streets. And then autumn would come. Spokane was beautiful. It had that, you know, the leaves turn and then they fall in that autumn moon. And you'd lay out in the grass in your front yard and you'd try to find a 4-leaf clover. And maybe Valerie Little would come over and lay down next to you. You didn't know what to do with her, but boy, it was exciting. It's exciting. In winters, we'd go to Manitou and skate. And we'd Mr. Emer would build a bonfire, and his son Paul, who was a geek, wouldn't skate, but he fed the fire. And the guys would play hockey. Come in and go home and have cream of wheat and hot chocolate. In summers, it was Little League, and it was all the kids you knew. We'd been together for 28 of us on the same block, 427 West 28th. 28 kids. You all played football together, and you all played together, and it was warm, and it was friendly, and it was real. Comstock Park in the summer, you go swimming together. The most beautiful pool in the world, big, huge park, and you go down to Duncan Gardens and look at the rose gardens and play around. And about 13 or 14, when I realized that Hopalong Cassidy was not coming back, I drank. I had to have a drink. I took a six-pack from my parents and went out and drank it and went over to Gretchen McCullough's lawn and threw up. And so it was like that, in through high school. I worked at Stagers, IGA, and I passed out beer to the kids as they came by in their cars, and I had made a slit in the bathroom window downstairs, and I used to pass out cases of beer to them. Olympia, Ole, and Rainier, Inland Empire beers, and sake. Well, they had a supply of sake. I don't know. Someone wanted to try it, and I gave it to them. Never got caught. Drank out of the court. Tried to get a buzz on to go to the armory and get in a fight. And then dance. Remember throwing up all the time. Just couldn't keep it down. I kept thinking, gee, you know, maybe I'm allergic to hops. You know? And I got into college, Central Washington State College, and flunked out. Went to Yakima Valley College and flunked out of there. Met my future wife. Moved to Arizona and worked for Arizona Helicopters. Loading and dust and liquids for helicopters to spray on fields and for steermans to spray on the grapes. And I got a scholarship to go to the University of Arizona as an actor. And I didn't really know that I wanted to be an actor. It was just something that I could do, you know. And they had the art department and the theater department. As far as I was concerned, that was it. Because you could wear white shoes and overcoats and smoke dope. And if you didn't feel like painting, you could act. So I did that for a while, and then we toured for a little while, and then I had my first daughter. There wasn't any money. There wasn't any alcoholism. There was just $50 keys from Nogales. And I toured for a while, and then I came out here in 1967 and got a job as a writer and a performer and started making some money, a little bit of money. And you spent a little bit of time in bars, and then went on from there and got a little better job and a little bigger paycheck. And ended up spending a little bit more time in bars, but it wasn't anything that there was some dope around, and then there was a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but there was really no problem, I didn't think. And it didn't seem like I had enough money to do that. I was supporting 2 kids and a wife. And then the Comedy Store opened in 1973, and a partner of mine helped open that place up, and I used to go up there and perform. And one night I went there and I dropped a couple of blue barrels. It's acid to those of you who have not been initiated. And was performing and thought it perfectly natural. Okay, the lights were a little intense, but hey. And a friend was taking me home, and at Sunset Strip at about 50 miles an hour, I just wanted to get out. Had enough of that car ride. But no problem. So I left there. left that world of comedy and freakishness. And I moved up to Northern California and built a log cabin on 40 acres with no running water and no electricity. Like the Waltons. Night, John Boy. Night, Pa. And I bought a horse from a gypsy horse trader. He was going to haul my logs up, and I chopped my own trees down. And I attached them to the horse with traces. And the horse wouldn't pull the logs. Jericho, my buckskin gelding, would not pull the logs, so I hauled him up with the Volkswagen van and ripped the bumper off, the hay. The house. I'll build my house. Keep my family warm. And the house went up, and I had a book on how to build your own log cabin. And we'd had a rainstorm, and the whole center section had just melted away. But I had the beginning and the end. The middle was a little raunchy, but I had an idea. So I built a log cabin, and okay, it was crooked and it didn't get finished, but it was a work of art. And I was a logger and a janitor and a plumber and a surveyor and a teacher and an everything, just to make money, just to make ends meet so my family could eat. Food stamps and welfare, and finally I hitchhiked back to Los Angeles and decided to get some work of some kind, just something to pay off, to keep my little house and my 40 acres. And I got a job doing these documentaries for a sleazy cable company. And they were documentaries on people that had moved out of the city into the country. Something I knew something about. And they were going to be poetic, and they were going to be beautiful. So we traveled all over the country doing 54 half hours called America Still. Drinking our way through middle America, interviewing poets and the Shakers and the Amish. And I made a little bit of money, and I was in the middle of a divorce. And a guy walked into my room one day. We had an office in Sunset Gower, and he laid down this white powder on the table. I said, "What's that?" He said, "Try some of that." And I tried some of that, and my world changed. Chatty Cathy woke up. I was intelligent, I was brilliant, plus it made drinking so much more fun. You could go all night, all day. Didn't matter. And that's when I began to notice that slowly there was an evolutionary process starting, this phenomena of craving, that I just had to have it almost every day. It wasn't the drugs that I had to have, but I was on drinking now on a daily basis. And I started working in movies. A friend of mine got me a job acting in a movie. And I did 3, 4, 5 of them in a row. And I ended up in Bangkok, Thailand, doing a movie. And at that time in Thailand and Bangkok, you could get anything you wanted. Didn't matter. And I was able to get Valium and Captagon, which is a speed, and plus I was drinking a lot. And I became, for me, like that scene in Deer Hunter, when they go to find Chris Walken in that place. And I wanted to stay there. I hung out at a bar called The Rose with a bunch of expatriates. And I seemed to have the same story as they did. I wasn't an expatriate. I almost burned my draft card, but I was with those guys. And I understood running guns and selling dope. But I was in this movie. And the two worlds had stopped to really become different. They were now kind of like the same. So I came back here in 1981 to Los Angeles, addicted to Valium, a speed freak, and pretty much a 2/5 a day Jack Daniels kind of guy. So I decided to get off Valium. And I did. And I had no idea about being addicted to Valium. I didn't know what that was. And 3 days of that, with stuff falling off the ceiling, you know, and those images and that horror. And now I could just drink, and that was fine. Now, okay. So I had my own little stash downstairs in the basement, in a refrigerator. And a friend of mine said, you know, Craig, I think you might be an alcoholic. I'd like to take you to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, hey, great. So we went that night, and I went drunk. And it was a meeting here in Plummer Park. And I saw a bunch of what seemed to me like used car salesmen sitting around. A lot of red-faced people there. And I don't remember anything they said, and it didn't matter. I just remember being there and leaving and then going home. In about 1983, another friend of mine who was an actor said, I want to take you to a meeting at the Radford group out in the valley. And I said, fine. And I took a fifth of wine with me. And I went. I said, there's a speaker you got to hear. And the door, you know, the little church, is no longer there. Opened up. I stood outside so I could drink. He went inside, and there was a guy up there doing Jekyll and Hyde. He was doing Spencer Tracy, Lana Turner, Ingrid Bergman, all three of the parts. And he was better than Barrymore. Not as good looking. And I said, who the hell is that? This guy said, well, his name's Clancy. And he did Lana Turner so well. That's Spencer Tracy. You know, the fingers grew. And then there was another image about a Borden's the cow thing. I heard Borden, the cow. I was the one who invented the cow. And one other thing, which was Kamchatka goes boom. Boom. Don't you get it? Men of genius. I was laughing so hard, and I was drunk, and I was enjoying. Because see, my biggest fear was, if I stop drinking and using, I'm not going to be anything. Anything. I rely on this to be able to be with you. How am I going to be? And here was someone doing it. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe there was someone that had this joy. So I followed this guy around to where he spoke. And I ended up here, way in the back, in my motorcycle leathers. And I'd park my bike out here. I'd let it drop, just and I'd come jingle jangling in, and I wanted to wear my helmet, but no, they won't let you do that. You know, put the visor down. And I started going to meetings fairly regularly. I don't know why. I just showed up. And I got 60 days of sobriety, and I went to New York. And I did a Broadway play. It was 2.5 hours, 2 characters. And they fired the other guy I was working with 2 weeks prior to opening. Good reason to drink. So I did. And I drank all the way through the play, through previews, through the whole thing. And in January 20th, I had a blackout on stage in the second act. And I woke up at the end of the third act bowing. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I know. Oh, stop. And I looked over at my partner, and he was looking at me, and he said, and it was true that men of genius, I had no idea what I did, conceive great things. He doesn't know that. They're standing, they're applauding. It must have been great. And I remember going backstage and the director and the writer coming at me down the aisle. And they looked like harpies, you know. No! And I locked my dressing room door. And I had some more Cavassier and coffee. And I got out, and Doria was there, my soon-to-be wife, and I said, well, there you go. I've reached it. I got the zone, babe. She said, Craig, that is the most humiliating thing I've ever seen you do. I had no retort because I didn't know what I did. So I raced down to the Fireside Group, January 21st, 1984, and that was my sobriety day. Thank God they were still there. Thank God that meeting had decided to wait for me to get my seat. I think more than anything else, when I came into this program, I was so afraid and so scared and so unsure and so frightened that if I gave you what you wanted, I would be nothing. And I remember being asked here, are you willing to give that up by somebody? Are you willing to give up what you do to get sober? I didn't think it was a fair question. And I didn't answer it. I didn't know how to answer it. But I just came. And the one thing that did impress me immediately here was truth. I heard the truth for me. And they gave me a simple way to go about achieving what other people seemed to have, which was some kind of serenity. Well, the fact that I didn't have a coherent thought when I got here was a real big deal to me. I was insane. I couldn't keep a thought in my head. It wouldn't stay there. There was so much noise in my head that all I wanted was two things, basically to stop the noise and to lose weight. And when they gave me the options of what it took to get sober here, you know, you can stop drinking and get sober, you can keep drinking and go insane, or you can die. And I couldn't answer the question what I wanted to do. They said, you may want to rethink this. It occurred to me that I was in this thing called denial. Well, gradually I was able to find people that were able to help me. I got a sponsor in this program. He was one of Clancy's first babies, Frank S. He's no longer with us. And through him and through other people in the program, I was able to achieve a measure of serenity that I never, ever dreamt was possible. I have been rocketed into a fourth dimension on a given basis, on a given day, on a given moment, more often than I ever dreamt of. I found a higher power here that connected me to a source that I never believed possible, that I was not sure was a gift that you had to give. Something that I always wanted. Just a little bit of inner content, just a little bit of peace and understanding. I had the extraordinary experience of going over here to a Westwood meeting and having to be with a girl who was deaf. And her interpreter didn't come with her that night, so she asked me to lip read for her. So there was a speaker that night who was talking about having killed a little girl in his car. And I was facing this lady and speaking for him. And the most amazing thing happened. It became my story. It was the most unbelievable experience I ever had. It reconnected me. His story was so different than mine, I couldn't believe it. And yet here it was the same feelings, the same thoughts, the same illusions. And the magic thing for me that happened here when I got sober, that I never dreamt of that was possible, is that I made commitments. I was a secretary, I was a cleanup guy. I went out and did my thing for a year being cleanup, a year being secretary. Then I do this, and then I do that. I park car, I did what I was told, and thank God I had a sponsor that made me do that. Thank God he gave me the direction, because I had always had this thing about being hypocritical. If I didn't have the right motive, what the hell good was it? Well, I was taught here I didn't need to have the right motives. I just did it. And I still do that today. I act as if. It's the most amazing thing. I still don't know how it works, because I'm, nuts half the time anyway, so it doesn't, but I see it working for me. I see it making me so much better. I've had in the last 10 years the most incredible change in my life that's imaginable. I found myself with power. In a world that needs to be, power is that thing that's magic. And I found myself having some kind of control. So this started driving me nuts. I didn't know what to do with it. And it scared me to be getting it back again. And people started calling me a different name, and they started looking at me differently, and they started, not acting the same. And I thought, my God, I can't be this person, thing. So I met with Frank. And I said, Frank, this was down in Venice, and it was 3 days before he died. And I said, and I hadn't seen him for a while. He lived in Hawaii, and we had met there, and he had shown up one day at this kind of open-air meeting in Kona. And he said, do you have a sponsor? I said, no. He said, well, I'm your sponsor. Name's Frank. Okay. And that began this 8-year relationship. And I said, Frank, I don't know how to deal with these people who have no respect for me. They don't give a damn about me. They don't want, they don't want anything. They want to use me. They want me to fit into their, this is the last thing. He says, well, what do you want? What do you want, Craig? And I says, I guess I want love. I just want love and respect. And he said, well, in order for that to happen, you're going to have to be respectful, and you're going to have to love. You mean like what? Of them? They're mediocre. I mean, they have they hate just be respectful and love. And don't expect anything in return. Can you do that? Yeah. That's it? Yeah. And pray for them. Pray for those things you want for them. Okay. Yeah, right. So we went to a meeting, and he was the speaker. And he had me read the St. Francis prayer. So we went to dinner afterwards. And he said, hey, by the way, did you, when you were reading the St. Francis prayer, did you remember what it said? I said, what do you mean? He says, where there is wrong, may I bring the spirit of... Yeah, I remember reading that. What is it? Where there's wrong, may I bring the spirit of forgiveness. I said, that's what it said. He says, yeah. Say it again. Where there is wrong, may I bring the spirit of forgiveness. Okay. He says, it doesn't say, where there is wrong, may I bring the spirit of right. And so, when we scattered his ashes in Kona Bay, and this is a man, by the way, that was, I'm sure a lot of you knew him, Frank S. No hair on his head at all, but had one little strand back here that he wore in a ponytail. The last time I saw him, he was like a Yakuza. He had so many tattoos. He was getting into tattoos, real heavy. It's kind of worrisome. Okay, the eyeliner went a little far, okay? When he tattooed eyeliner on, I thought, hey, you know, time to find a new sponsor. The most gentle, loving, caring, aware, sober person I think I've ever met. And I scattered those ashes and I thought, you know, I am so fortunate. Where in the world am I going to meet anybody like that? Where am I going to meet somebody that made me aware of these coincidences that are miracles where God chooses to remain anonymous? Where am I going to get this incredible connection on a loving basis that I have never dreamt existed before? Where am I going to feel that you and I have some measure of togetherness? That these steps literally altered my perception of reality. It changed my whole way of life, and what I used to use to do that no longer works. And I haven't had to use it. That I can go to these meetings and I can sit out there with these people and I don't get judged. I just give back that love and respect, and I don't need to mean it. All it is an action, and then pretty soon it really starts to mean something. I hear an inner voice happening. I've been so very fortunate to be able to have that, because I always feel that what I'm getting now, whatever measure of monetary gain or whatever measure of material gain, is directly proportional to my spiritual condition, and it frightens the hell out of me, because I don't deserve any of it. I get embarrassed on any given basis. I was just in Orlando, Florida, in a stadium filled with 60,000 people. And I had to leave at halftime because they were getting rowdy. I mean, I felt like Caesar. And God, you know what that's like for an alcoholic? Get the chariots out. Scared me to death. Got me down on my knees, and it just forced me, and that's just a little portion, you know. I mean, that's my life and my little thing. But it's happening, and there's got to be a way to share that experience and to share what it's like. I recently went up to visit my father and mother, who I'd never seen their graves before, and I took Noah with me, my then 16-year-old son, and we went to visit and just say something over my parents' grave, and found the cemetery, and the guy came out and said, "Hey, Coach, how you doing?" "Here you go. Mom and Dad are over there somewhere." So I went and hadn't seen them, you know. They died when I was pretty young, and got nearby to where these plaques were, and these rainbirds start. And I got flowers. And I look, and there's a girl over there with the thing that turns them on, and I go, hey, you know. And she doesn't hear. I go, hey. So I go out there with the flowers and Noah, and we try to find the graves, and we're sopping wet, and I got good clothes on, you know, and wrinkling and dripping. Find my mom and dad's grave, and don't want to say anything. It says no vases or flowers here, but okay. Love you, Mom and Dad. Sober. We get in the car, and it's sopping wet. Left the windows down. Noah turns to me and says, "Dad, what the heck was that all about?" I said, "I have no idea." But we were laughing and kind of joking with each other. And that night, I took my brother-in-law to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous on Coeur d'Alene Lake. I'd 12-stepped him, and he'd gotten sober. And we sat around laughing. And I told this story, and he said, as we're riding back in the boat at Coeur d'Alene Lake, and the moon's up, and it was gorgeous, you know, how the moon reflects through the waves like that. And he said, "You know that story about your dad?" And I said, "Yeah." "And your mom?" And he says, "You know, the day we buried your father, you probably don't remember, his grave was filled with water. They turned on the rainbirds, and it filled." And for an instant, the connection that went through me said, oh God, oh God. If you hadn't gotten sober, I'd never heard that story. If I wasn't sober, I'd never heard it. Can you imagine the depth that my dad would play that joke? I mean, wouldn't that be a little too much? But it was real. And for that moment, you know, and then I tried to explain it, and it went. And it go, God. Well, that's what these moments are like. Thank you, Judy, for asking me to do this. Thank you, Clancy, and thanks, everybody.
My name is George Otis, and I'm an alcoholic. And I'm glad to be at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I like to say that because I don't always feel like going, and I still go, and as a result, I'm still sober today. I told you what I am. I'll also tell you what I'm not. I am not an adult child of alcoholics, so I can't blame them. And I did not come from a dysfunctional family, except insofar as I was a member of it. Any family would have been dysfunctional. And I'm not really concerned about the inner child. And I can't blame the Greek Orthodox Church, and I can't blame my teachers anymore. You know, wherever I was, wherever I ended up is where I put myself, but it took me a long time to see that. I got sober in 1980, but that was not my first time in AA. I went to my first meeting in December of 1959, and that's a long time ago, and I was younger, and I had hair, and I had all of my own teeth, and the first meeting I went to was in northern New Jersey, and I walked up there, and you know, it was on the second floor, and I thought I was in a geriatric ward. They were at least in their 40s and 50s, you know, and I don't remember what they said. And I didn't go to AA because I believed I was an alcoholic. I went because the president of my company thought I was an alcoholic, and he was sober 1 year. And he gave me the 20 questions one night. And if you're anything like me, when someone who has absolute and total control of your economic destiny asks you to answer certain questions, you're going to stop and think, what kind of answers would please this guy? You know? So I lied and answered yes to 17 out of 20. And they were a lie at that time, because if I'd answered honestly, maybe one, possibly two, but sure as hell no more than that. You know, and he took me to my first meeting, which is the one I mentioned. And I'm not going to dwell on the drunk-a-log, but I'll tell you two incidents that had a lot to do with my drinking. In 1960, we were going to New Haven, Connecticut for a business meeting. And he said, I've arranged for you to be a 10-minute speaker tonight. And the reason that was significant for me was because it turned out to be the Skid Row meeting on Crown Street, a few blocks away from Yale University. And I walked in and I saw a lot of people that smelled. They were literally dressed in rags. They were unkempt. They were unshaven. And they were scroffing up donuts, which was probably the only meal they got that day. And I looked at them and said, my God, I'm not like them. If I ever got that bad, you know, I would do something about my drinking. And the second thing was that I heard something that to me at that time was one of the most intellectually indefensible statements I had ever heard. And that is the progression of alcoholism and the disease even when you don't drink. And I couldn't accept that because that didn't make sense to me, you know. Because I was a periodic when I did it in those years. And to me, the alcoholic was the stereotypical alcoholic. You know, the guy with the old overcoat and the wine bottle and the brown paper bag sticking out of his back pocket. And I didn't fit that criteria. So therefore, I didn't have a problem. And I didn't drink every day. And then as time went on, I started drinking every weekend, so I had to reanalyze this and come up with a new idea of what alcoholism is. I said, well, if I drank every night, then I know I'd have a problem. And as a few years went on, now I'm drinking every night. So I thought about that for a while. I said, well, if I drank in the afternoons, you know, then I know I'd have a problem. And one day I'm in our office in Chicago, and we finished early that day, about 3 o'clock, and one of the guys said, let's go out and hoist the couple. You know how funny they talk in the Midwest? Hoist the couple. And I looked at him, and you know, I said, well, it's not even 5 o'clock yet. And you've all heard the standard answer, because he said something to me that made sense. He said, it's got to be 5 o'clock someplace in the world. And you know, it made sense to me. So now I'm drinking in the afternoon, so I said to myself, well, wait a minute. If I were really an alcoholic, I'd be drinking in the morning, wouldn't I? And I had to go out and get a new briefcase, and I could get an attaché case. All I needed was about 1 inch thick to carry the paperwork that I carried. I went out and got the thickest one I could find, 5.5 inches, made by Samsonite. Why? Because I could put 2 pints of vodka on the bottom. One of them always wrapped in a kitchen towel so they won't clink. You learn that from experience. And you cover it with paperwork, and then you go in and you tell the girl, you give her your oversized coffee mug and say, bring me a little coffee, but not too much, because, you know, caffeine makes me nervous and jumpy. And she'd bring it in with a little bit of coffee, and when she'd leave, I'd fill it with vodka. Now I'm drinking in the morning, and I said to myself, well, I really am not an alcoholic, because if I were an alcoholic, I'd be drinking when I first got up in the morning. And by this time, I had come to California, and I had a house in Woodland Hills, and I found myself at 10 minutes to 6 outside of Dave's bar, waiting for it to open and going in, you know, and the bartender, you know, you want your usual, and you play the game, and, well, I don't know if I'm really up to it right now, but maybe, yeah, you know, so I'd have a double vodka and a beer back. And that's the way it went. The next to last time that I drank, I was in a detox over on Riverside Drive. And at 10:30 in the morning, I'm lying in bed and I'm saying, my God, this will never happen to me again. And I meant it with all my heart and soul. And at 11:45, I walked out of the front door. And without even thinking, I made a left turn and went down to the Players Bar and started what I hope and pray was my last drunk. And the book talks about that. That book talks about me all the way through, because it says we forget the remorse and guilt we felt a week or a month ago. This was an hour ago. And I don't remember any conscious thought. I just walked out the door, made a left turn, and got drunk. And I don't do those things anymore today. Somebody took me by the hand. And I didn't want to go to Alcoholics Anonymous because it had never worked before. Why would it work now? You know, I don't care if your IQ doesn't reach room temperature in Alaska. If you go to meetings in and out for 21 years and you hear Chapter 5, you memorize it. And it was so easy to get glib in the language of Alcoholics Anonymous and put on a front. And I did that for a long time, you know. And every day I was expecting to drink again. And it wasn't until my 13th month that I realized that the obsession to drink had left me for the first time. And it wasn't a sudden flash for me. I think it'd been that awareness was coming over a period of time. It's just that I became aware of it at that time. That, you know, I think I can stay sober. And that's when I was able to make a conscious commitment to my sobriety. And I said I would do anything and go to any lengths. And I meant it at the time. And most of the time I've gone to any lengths. There are times when I haven't. And there are times when my character defects will kick in full bore, because I've got every single character defect I came in with. The only difference is they don't dominate me as much today as they did then. I'm grateful to be here. A lot of good things have happened, a lot of hard things have happened. In the 15-month period, my father died, my mother died, my kid sister died, my nephew committed suicide behind drugs, my sponsor died, and my wife of 33 years said that we had to separate, and that went into a divorce. And I'm bouncing off the walls, and I'm saying, where's all this happy, joyous, and free crap I've been hearing about? You know, when do I get mine? You know, when does something good happen? And I started isolating. And I didn't want to talk to anybody. And you know something? The book was right one more time. Because somewhere out of the woodwork, 2 days apart, 2 newcomers came into my life again, and very reluctantly and very unwillingly, I started working with them, and after about a month had gone by, I was getting out of myself, and everything seemed to level out. I had read the book many, many times before, but I must tell you that it was at 12 years sober when Clint spent some time with me and got me into the book again that a whole new meaning came into my life. Because there were things in there that I had read, and I just got a totally different perspective on it. And I have a respect for the book and what's in it today that I never had in my first 12 years of sobriety. You know. My time is up. I want to leave you just with one thought. It's a little prayer that I heard a long time ago, and I've liked it. And anytime I speak, I end up with it. And it's the prayer that they used to tell to the sailors back in the days of sailing ships when they used to leave their home port and they'd be gone for 6 months or a year or 2 years before they returned. You know, and what they used to say is, we wish you fair winds and calm seas and a safe harbor. And I found a safe harbor in Alcoholics Anonymous. I hope and pray that you have as well. And I would like to thank Judy very much for the privilege of speaking tonight. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Our second 10-minute speaker is Marlena P.
Hi, my name is Marlena Propersi, and I'm an alcoholic. And I want to thank Judy for the honor of speaking here tonight for 10 minutes. This is great. This is the first time in 10 years. And I'm nervous and all that other stuff. And there's lots of people. And I'll begin with the format. I was born in Panama City, Panama. My parents came over here about 35, 36 years ago in search of what other immigrant people, I guess, come here for, and that's for better life, better education for us, my sister and myself. And come to find out, probably about 6 years ago, that was a lie. They came here because my father had drank one too many times, had one too many mistresses, and my mom was going to divorce him. So, but we're here, and that's all that counts. And I thought that was kind of interesting. In Panama, the people there are real wild and crazy. They drink a lot. That's their life. They party. They don't really work that much. Sometimes they do. Depends on the day or the week. I have a lot of family that are drunks. I don't know of any that are alcoholics because I didn't even know the word alcoholic. To me, normal was drinking and seeing my family drink, having fights at home, not me, but the older people. I remember as a child, bloody noses, black eyes, a lot of dancing, a lot of salsa music. I mean, they love that salsa music, you know, and the only word I knew was borracho, you know, and there was a lot of borrachos in my family, you know, and I enjoyed it. I had a really good time. I would, as a little girl, I would go around and pick up the drinks. And I loved beer, and in Panama, when you're little and you like to drink, they say, oh, let's give her some beer, you know, and then you start drinking and you start getting happy, and they go, oh, she's such a good beer drinker. And, you know, they think it's great, you know, that you love beer and you're getting loaded. And so it was okay for me to do that. My family also believed in, or actually my parents believed that I was a nervous, quote, nervous child. I was given Valium at a very early age, I think about 7 years old. They started giving me Valium and Librium, so I remember the little, I think they were white, pink, and blue, I don't know, the different levels. I remember taking them and then just mellowing, you know, and just, you know, being under control. And when that stopped working, I remember my mom taking me to a doctor who said that I was nervous and out of control and giving me some real heavy tranquilizers that put me out for the whole summer. I didn't see the beach. I didn't see anything. All I remember is lifting up my head and my dad was mopping the floor and just going, huh? And then going back to sleep again. I mean, that's how I was. And all because I was, quote, nervous. I used to wake up at night screaming and yelling and crying and uncontrollable laughter and all that stuff. And that was how my childhood was. Later on, when I was 15 years old, I started getting into marijuana, lots of marijuana all the time. 16, I did it all day long. I used to go to class at St. Mary's Academy. We used to sneak out and go back to class, and I would, you know, just zonk out at the desk, and all my friends would try and protect me from getting caught. I loved it. I loved that, and I loved hash, and I loved all the drug stuff, but I really liked drinking. I really enjoyed our family parties. I loved that. I loved the Cuba Libres, you know, those were fun to drink, you know. And then my dad said, you know, if you really want to drink the right way, let me tell you how you're going to drink. You're not going to have that, what we call foo-foo stuff. You're going to have bourbon or scotch, pick it, whichever one you want. And you're going to either have it on the rocks or plain and simple. And he showed me, and that's how I drank. I drank bourbon straight up or on the rocks, and I could take a lot of it. I mean, I was very proud of that too. I used to be able to drink them in under at the bars, and then they weren't any good for me, you know. Well, on to the next one. I think when I was finally of age 21, I was able to drink in the bars, although at home my dad had Jack Daniels for me, and I was drinking all the time anyway. We had our choices of liquor at home. Everybody got what they wanted, and I liked Jack Daniels. So at the bars, that's what I would do. I started drinking lots of bourbon. I started drinking a lot at General Motors when I worked there with an older crowd. And not until maybe 5 or 4 years ago, I was sitting out here somewhere, and somebody up here was sharing about getting raped, and I had blocked it out completely. But it happened when I was celebrating, and a coworker raped me. And I don't remember anger as much. I just remember just blocking it out. I'm really good at stuffing feelings. Even today, I can still stuff my feelings and not even know it. That's how perfect I got at that. My drinking continued, and then I met my first husband, and he was perfect. He drank a lot. He was passed out most of the time. Perfect. You know, that's just the kind of guy I want. We did a lot of other drugs together, but we did a lot of heavy drinking. And then he sobered up, and I went into Al-Anon because I really didn't want to go in there, but I went in there anyway. And Al-Anon was wonderful, taught me a lot. I had to look at myself, and it was really beneficial to me as far as looking at what my part in all this was. And after that, I think maybe about a year later, I was in Al-Anon for maybe about a year and a half. A year later, I put my hand up at a AA meeting, and because I wanted to drink so bad that I kept drooling for tequila or anything. And I remember telling Susie, Susie's been my sponsor for all these years, I remember the first year was so hard that I kept drooling over tequila, drooling over liquor, and I thought that you could only drool over food or a big piece of chocolate cake. And here I was drooling over tequila and bourbon, and just give me that. And oh God, I wanted it so bad that it was really hard to stay away from it. I've been sober for 10 years now, and my life has completely changed. It's funny how when you come up here, you think, what am I going to say? I thought I forgot my story back there. Renee was helping me back there trying to keep me calm, but now I'm running out of time. But today I live a real wonderful life today. Not that it doesn't have its ups and downs. I have a step-family situation, which is very hard and very difficult. It has been since not really since day one, but since day one that my present husband and I got married, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, that's been a really difficult situation. My dad passed away last November. I went through it sober, although I thought I was going to drink in December. I really had a really tough time with it. I never thought that I would stay sober through death. My first child, Lauren, died when she was 8 days old, and I remember just going into heavy drinking at that time. I drank for a long time after that, and as a matter of fact, I finally gave her to God to rest in peace 5 years ago, and I'll never forget her, but she's in peace now, and she's in peace with me. That was a terrible experience to go through, but comparing that to how I went through my dad's death, because of the program, because of the fellowship, because of the steps and the tools that we have here, I didn't drink. I did it a day at a time, a moment at a time, and I was able to, I wasn't able to get there. He had already passed away, but I was able to be there for my mom at least and help her through her mourning period, and it's been okay. And it's all because of AA. It's all because of sharing with my friends here, having a good sponsor like Susie, and the fellowship of AA. So thank you, everybody. And so yeah.
Thank you, Marlena. Please remain seated.
Next month, we're going to have the people stand. We celebrate birthdays at this meeting. Around here, we consider a birthday to be 365 days all in a row, free from alcohol, marijuana, or many of the things that Craig talked about that I've certainly never heard of before. If you'd like to take a cake here, please ask me before the meeting. Always a good idea. And then sign up with Renee. And tonight we have some birthdays. As usual, we will sing briskly. We will talk briefly. Our first birthday is for 1 year for Tom M.
My name is Tom Buncher. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Judy, for letting me take this cake. That was my sponsor, Norman, who's been a great help to me since I got here. I'd like to thank my God, the people of AA, my AA friends, and it was a very special program for me. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Tom. We have a 2-year birthday for Ron P.
My name is Ron, alcoholic. I want to thank God, Frank, Clancy, and first sponsor Ed D for the first year, and all my AA friends. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Ron. We have a 4-year birthday for Pilar B.
My name is Pilar and I'm an alcoholic. And I want to thank God for my sobriety. And I want to thank my sponsor, Clancy, for his love and support. I want to thank my friends that take the time to talk to me when I need them. And I want to thank Alcoholics Anonymous and all of you. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Pilar. We have a 6-year birthday for Ian M.
My name's Ian. I'm an alcoholic. And I want to thank God, Alcoholics Anonymous, my sponsor, Frank, for his help, guidance, and strength, Clancy and Charlotte for the yard, my AA brothers, and all of you.
Happy birthday, Ian. We have a 7-year birthday for Kevin D.
My name's Kevin Dobson. I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to thank my God. I'd like to thank Clancy for his sponsorship. I'd like to thank Clancy and Charlotte for the yard, Clancy for the structure of this group, Clancy specifically this year through his guidance and sponsorship. I was able to put my family back together, and I'm as happy as can be. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Kevin. We have another 7-year birthday for Dallas P.
My name is Dallas, and I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to thank God, Rita, and all of you.
Happy birthday, Dallas. We have an 11-year birthday for Jerome B.
My name's Jerome. I'm an alcoholic. I want to thank God. I want to thank Bill for sponsoring me these last 11 years. I want to thank Clancy for being such a good example. When I walked in here this evening, I forgot to tell Judy that it was my birthday, and at break time, my sponsor goes, "Did you tell Judy you were taking a cake?" I was so busy thinking about myself, I forgot to mention that I needed to take a cake. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Jerome. We have a 19-year birthday for Renee O. Hi, my name's Renee O'Neill, and I'm an alcoholic. I want to thank all the women in this group, half of whom have probably sponsored me at one time or another. If it wasn't for the women of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's no chance I could ever stay sober, because I thought I was unique when I got here, and I thought I was the only person with the set of problems that I had. And I learned here that I'm not. I want to thank Millie, who's just recently taken me on. She's helped me all summer, and I've been really grateful for her. I want to thank Judy. Without Judy, I could not possibly have a day of comfort. I want to thank Clancy, who's walked me through some very terrible times. I want to thank my family. They're not here. I tried to get them to come tonight, and they couldn't be here. And I want to thank my magnificent obsession, Katie. She's just the most precious thing that God ever gave me next to my sobriety. And I want to thank all of you. Happy birthday, Renee. We have a 20-year birthday for a former secretary of this group, Pat Y. Hi, everybody. My name is Pat Yo, and I'm an alcoholic.
And I'd like to thank my sponsor, Evelyn, who's been my sponsor for the last 17 years. She's helped me so much. I just can't begin to tell you how much she means to me. I'd like to thank my first two sponsors, Maggie V and Betty H, who gave me a good, strong foundation in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'd like to thank the women that I sponsor. They mean more to me than they can imagine. They keep me walking like I talk. You know, I have to do the stuff I'm telling them to do, or it's pretty meaningless, you know. I'm glad that I have them in my life. I particularly want to thank my husband. Well, not more particular than my sponsor. I meant, you know, in addition, I'd like to thank my husband, who I love very much. I met my husband here in Alcoholics Anonymous, and we have a good life here together. And I can't, you know, I never imagined that I would be living the kind of a life that I'm living today. I was thinking tonight how appropriate it was that Craig was speaking. It's kind of a show business night. I, of course, as many of you know, had a show business career. Thank you. Some of you remember me. I would just like to say that I've come a long way for an old go-go dancer, and I'm very pleased to be sober. Thank you. Happy birthday, Pat. We have a 22-year birthday for Bill A. Pat.
Hi, I'm Bill Adelman, alcoholic. And I'd like to thank my sponsor, Chuck, for, God, I guess it's 19 years now that he's been my sponsor. And he's been quite an example, and he's given me a lot of good direction over the years. I'd like to thank Clancy down there for his, you know, kindness and subtle little suggestions over the years. I made it that way, too. I'd like to thank my wife, Nancy, for, you know, being my wife and my good friend, and also for her subliminal direction. And I'd also like to thank the class of 1973, and last but not least, the Pacific Group Coffee Crew. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Bill. We have another 22-year birthday for Tom K.
Hi, I'm Tom Kirkaby, and I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to thank God for getting me to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'd like to thank our program for the simple design for living, which keeps me going every day. And I'd like to thank Clancy for his excellent sponsorship over the last 19 years. And my first sponsor, Herb T., who died sober. And I'd like to especially thank my lovely fiancée, Brenda, who's a very kind and loving person, and we're getting married next month, and I'm very anxious about that, and pleased and grateful for her love, and I love her very much, and I want to thank all of you for my sobriety as well. Thanks very much.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.